All right, welcome to the FA40 podcast. I'm your host, Josh Proch. Hope you guys are having a good new year. We're, a couple days in here already, and it's the time of year where a lot of people, they're thinking maybe a little bit more about fitness or recommitting back to it or starting for the first time and things like that. It's always a busy time in the gym and fitness world. So today, what I want to talk to you about, we're going to talk about calorie burn. And the title of this is "You Just Burned 1,000 Calories, So What?" And this time of year, people, like I said, they're thinking about their resolutions. They're thinking about, like, I want to drop a few pounds of fat, and a lot of times they're focused on how many calories they're burning in their workout. And there's even some programs and things like that they talk about how many calories their program burns and everything. But, that's not necessarily the most important fact or the most effective way to measure the effectiveness of the workout and fat loss and things like that. In today's world, we're obsessed with using technology to track everything. And that in fitness, that includes, calories. It includes how much we're eating, our heart rates, our work, all that sort of stuff. And that can be good, but, does it really matter? And the answer with that is yes and no. I mean, if you're going to do something with it, then we can use it. But a lot of times we're tracking stuff, but we're not really using that information for anything. And, with the calories, if I'm burning a lot of, like, a certain number of calories, I'm just going to, because we titled this 1,000 calories, I'm just going to use 1,000 calories for that. Does that matter? Does that make it more of an effective workout than one that maybe burned 500 calories? And, to answer that, it's kind of yes and no. It really depends. And the problem with tracking how many calories burned is there's this thing called EPOC, which is the excess post-oxygen consumption. And this measures the number of calories burned after a bout of exercise is completed. So with workouts that use primarily the aerobic system, what we see is we'll have a high in-workout calorie burn, but then we'll have a low EPOC, which is how many calories are burned outside or after the workout. But then with workouts that use the anaerobic system, we'll have a lower in-workout calorie burn, but then we'll have a higher EPOC, or amount of calorie burn outside and post-workout. So, for example, if you burn 1,000 calories in an anaerobic workout that lasted roughly 50 minutes, you're going to have a lower EPOC than if you did an anaerobic workout that only burned maybe 400 calories in that same 50-minute period. And the reason this is when we use the anaerobic system, or when we use the aerobic system, it'll burn a ton of calories while exercising. But then once we stop exercising, that elevated calorie burning rate, it basically drops pretty quickly. But when we do something that's anaerobic, and what happens is for the same length of time, we'll see a lower calorie burn in our workout. But then once that exercise stops, our bodies are going to stay at an elevated calorie burning rate for hours and even a few days. It's about 72 hours post-workout. We stay at this elevated rate. And again, over that period of time, it's slowly tapering down, but it's still at an elevated rate from baseline. And the difference between aerobic and anaerobic exercise. So aerobic is your typical cardio, like jogging. Even some of the high intensity boot camps, they are interval training, but they start crossing into the aerobic side because they're not allowing for long enough recoveries and things like that. Where the anaerobic side, we're having longer rest periods, strength training base, things like that. And that's primarily what we're doing here in the gym. So the reason that resistance training or anaerobic training creates greater body comp changes than cardio is because of this EPOC. So that 50 minutes of cardio, you might burn 1,000 calories, but then the EPOC is almost, I'm going to say zero, because it comes back to baseline relatively quickly. But with the resistance training, you might burn, 300, 400 calories in the workout, but then your body's going to stay at this elevated rate for, up to 72 hours afterwards, slowly declining as it gets back down to zero or baseline. So with the anaerobic exercise, the adjusted calorie burn from the workout can be between 2 and 4 times more than the aerobic workout. I hope this is all making sense. You guys are all kind of following this here a little bit. But I want to take this even a step further. So what happens when we don't allow for long enough rest periods in between our sets and our exercises and stuff? So a lot of times people will be doing strength training, but they're not allowing for enough rest or recovery time between their sets. So that can start carrying that anaerobic or that strength workout. It can start moving it into a little bit of the cardio or aerobic realm there a little bit. So to look at this more, we have 3 energy systems that we need to look at, and these energy systems' job is to create ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate, and that's what gives our muscles energy to contract. So there's 3 ways we can do this. We have the ATP PCR system, and this provides immediate energy from the stored ATP that we have in the body. We only have enough stored in our muscles to last for about 10 to 15 seconds before that's depleted. Again, it's going to vary by person and conditioning level. People that are more conditioned will be able to take that a little bit longer. People that are not as deconditioned will be a little bit less. But again, we're looking at about 10 to 15 seconds of energy. Once that's depleted, this is where the glycolytic system is going to kick in, and now it is going to continue producing ATP from muscle glycogen that is stored in the muscle for about another 60 to 90 seconds before that gets depleted. And then once that's depleted, the last system we have is the aerobic system. And this kicks in and will continue to produce ATP indefinitely as we're going. And when this happens, once we've kicked that aerobic system in, we're no longer working in the anaerobic world, and we've crossed over to the aerobic system, and we lose that epoch. And that's what happens when we're not taking like a minute between sets or whatever rest periods we're using, and we're trying to keep our heart rate up the whole time by going from thing to thing. So we can train these systems through the different types of exercise and work to rest ratios that we choose, and they're going to affect our body's metabolism differently through each one. And again, that's not to say that one's going to be better than the other. They just have different outcomes. So something like HIIT training, in its true form, it's going to work exclusively on the ATP PCR system, and it's going to create the greatest change in how our metabolism functions through increasing the mitochondrial function of our cells. So when I say in our true form, what I mean there is when our work to rest ratio is about 5 times or more. So that would be doing like 10 seconds of work and then resting for 50 seconds to a minute, maybe even 90 seconds. So we're doing really, really high output work, and then we're having a really long rest in comparison to the work ratio. And you're probably only able to do maybe a handful of those, maybe 8 rounds or something if you're working that hard. But that'll change how the mitochondria in the cells use energy. So after, like I said, after 5 rounds of that, this ATP PCR system, it's no longer going to be able to keep up and replenish the ATP in that rest period, and then you start to cross over into that glycolytic system. And then this happens once you get into the glycolytic, it moves into the anaerobic. So again, when we look at a lot of the traditional interval workouts that people are doing, they're doing 30 seconds of work, 15 seconds rest, things like that. They're kind of working in the anaerobic system. It's not necessarily true aerobic work, but it's not necessarily true anaerobic with the like strength training and things like that. So that's why we want these rest periods in the workouts. So basically, to kind of sum this all up, is calorie burn is important, but it's not. It's just not the most effective way to to measure how good a workout is. So especially when it comes to losing body fat and building lean muscle tissue and things like that. So we want to really, the goal of working out is to increase our metabolism so that we're burning more calories all day long, and keeping our metabolism at a higher rate. And that's going to create a greater change in our body over time and over the long haul. And that's why we like the rest periods. That's why we lean more towards the strength side versus the aerobic side, with all of our programming and things. And that's not to say that we don't recommend cardio, or that we're demonizing cardio. It has a place. I typically tell people get 2 to 3 strength workouts in a week, and then if they want to do some interval training and some cardio on top of that, that's going to be the best recipe for the best long-term results. I know that got a little bit technical today. If you guys have questions or a little bit confused on that, just ask us. That's what we're here for. Put some comments in under the posts here and stuff. Shoot us an email, any of that sort of stuff. We'll be glad to answer that and go explain it a little bit more to you. But again, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it helpful. And if you need anything, reach out and we'll be glad to help. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and rate and review us.